my mom actually wrote that, so I feel like we had to speak at something, and I was like, I don't know what to say. She's like, oh, so it's written like mother, right? And coincidentally, I just finished a marathon with her on last Saturday. So I'm walking a little bit stiff this past week, but I was very proud of her. She had a goal to come in under 5 hours, and she did it. So it's great to be here. I obviously love BYU. Maybe not obviously, but I do. So I'll give you a little bit of the rundown. I am an HR business partner now at Google, but I haven't always been that. So I have a lot of different experiences, and I think you probably have very similar experiences that got me at Google today. And a lot of them center around BYU. That's why I say I love BYU. I went here undergrad, I came and did my business school here. I did 4 different study abroads as an undergrad. So I did London and Washington Seminar and BYU Hawaii, and then I went to business school in Europe, study abroad. So you have to have some debt of gratitude when those are the kinds of experiences you can have here at BYU. And I love the humanities. So I remember when I was trying to make my decision for business school, I felt very, I was very internally conflicted because I felt like my identity was in humanities and it wasn't business per se. But I feel like studying the humanities in English taught me a lot about how to organize my thoughts and ideas, and I still encourage people to do that today. So after graduating, I went and worked for 3 years in Silicon Valley. I was deciding if I wanted to be a teacher, if I wanted to go into business, so I worked for Kaplan. And I decided, and I ran one of their tutoring centers. I got paid less than a teacher in Silicon Valley. I can't believe how much they paid me. It was nothing, but worked really hard, with crazy hours. Ran one of the tutoring centers, decided I was more interested in the business side of that than the teaching side. So I went to work for a software company, which was a small software company, Coordinate Software. And I did everything for them. It was a very small software company, so I planned the parties, and I did finance and revenue recognition, and I did some HR even in there. And then I decided I wanted to get an MBA, so I applied to BYU. I didn't really know what HR was. And I remember Craig Merrill, who's the director at the time, said, have you considered HR? And I hadn't. I didn't even go on the rafting trip because I had a trip to Thailand planned, and I was like, well, I'll think about HR. And then I learned more and more about HR in those first 2 weeks, where you learn all about everything the program has to offer. Decided I'd do it, and eventually ended up going to Procter & Gamble. Like I said, I was there at P&G for 5 years. I have such warm feelings towards P&G too. I had a wonderful experience at P&G. I worked in shave care, which was also known as male grooming at Procter & Gamble. So I was in Boston working for Gillette and The Art of Shaving and some of our other male brands. And what I did for almost 3 years there was in the plant and manufacturing, which I did not want to do when I graduated from the program. I said, that's the last thing I want to do is go work in manufacturing. I'm getting an MBA for a reason. But I would say it was one of the best learning experiences professionally that I've had. There's 600 people. We were non-unionized. We kept it that way, and you just get the most, anything can walk through your door at any minute in a plant. And so you get really great HR experience. Now I got to do it in Boston. I didn't have to be in the middle of Nebraska or the middle of places that don't have a lot of development, so I was lucky that way. But I really, and you don't have to do that at P&G, by the way, for those of you going. You don't have to do a plant experience, but I wanted to be in Boston, and it was a great experience. And I didn't think, I always sort of had this dream of coming back to Silicon Valley because my family lives in California. I like the West Coast. But I wasn't really planning on coming back to California. You know, I started a year ago. Yesterday was my anniversary. And my friend Laura Pearson reached out to me. She's in finance, and she's like, "We need HR people. You should think about it." So I was like, "Well, here's my resume." I hadn't updated it since my first year at the MBA program. So I was like, "Oh, I should update this." I sent her my resume, and I guess, like, I didn't know what she was I thought she was gonna comment on it, you know, like do the things, and she submitted it, and then the process just kept moving along, and I got an offer with Google to be an HR business partner, and I felt like I couldn't turn that down. So I reluctantly left P&G to come to the Valley and work for Google, which is where I am today. I support our API group that's 1,600 engineers who are all engineers. They are all very cerebral, and I work with our VP. His name is Eric Vallow. He used to be the CTO of Yahoo, and now he's at Google as VP. And I have 18 directors. So it's a great role. I have absolutely loved it. So that's sort of my background. But I wanted to ask you, so when you think about Google, what are some of the first things that come to mind for you? Because there's so many, I think people hear a lot about Google, but what are some of the things you think of? Yeah.
I think of innovation like Google X and the self-driving cars and that kind of stuff. Makes me excited.
Yep, you see a lot of self-driving cars.
I think of free stuff,
Free stuff.
like free Gmail, free search, obviously. I get free internet at my house, Robo.
Oh, that's great. I thought you meant the free food, which is,
Oh, no, I mean,
affects me daily, but yeah.
those
Yeah.
french fries are legit.
Yeah.
I think of like Google search and information, and also like the experience of like you're having an argument with somebody and you're like, well, let's just Google it. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what comes to my mind.
Uh-huh.
Everything's just there.
I work on search, so that makes me happy to hear that. Anything else? Yeah.
When I think of Google, I think of simplifying things. Google simplifies our life in so many ways.
Yeah.
And all the interfaces are so simple compared to other things.
Well, that's good to hear.
So
Do
you
you have
like
an
your Apple
Android?
or your iPhone?
Actually, I don't use an Android, so that.
I don't either. My director just told me, she's like, you gotta get rid of that. Give me the Pixel and I'll get rid of that. It'll be for Christmas. Yeah, yes, it is simple. Anything else?
I was just going to say, Google's at this place now where it seems like such a powerful company, like almost to the point where like Google owns the internet and is kind of this gatekeeper of all of this information and all of the data and insight that comes from having those resources.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I've experienced. I personally have felt the weight of that, just in terms of some of the things, Google search and knowing who we're they come up with the algorithms, and I think as a whole the company feels that as well. Yeah. Anything else? Well, we're going to do a little bit of trivia to see how much you guys know. So, when was Google founded? Anyone know? 2004.
I can Google it.
It's
No.
like 1990.
Yep, 1998. So it was, we were celebrating our 18th birthday,
Oh,
which
that's right.
is incredible. And what I loved about Google is for their 18th birthday, they asked every single employee to do 3 hours of service. So we all got to go out and do 3 hours of service to celebrate the 18th birthday. But what's incredible is it's only 18 years old and it has 61,000 employees. Do you know where Google's first office was?
There's a garage.
In a garage.
Palo Alto.
This is like a very traditional Silicon Valley. It was actually Susan's garage, Susan Wojcicki. She's the CEO of YouTube now, so she's working for IBM, which actually a lot of the engineers have come from IBM. And she let them rent out her garage in a couple of rooms in the garage. And Sergey married her sister, and then they got divorced. But that's, they're all connected that way. And what was Google's first product? Search. It's not a trick question. It was search. So Larry and Sergey were search. They were classmates at Stanford, and Larry had a dream one night that connected all the pieces of where he figured out how to connect all the pieces of the web together. And since then, they pulled it together. They started out with $100,000 of seed funding, and I've grown it today with search. So I wanted to play a video, if it will let me. Let's see. Well, I need permission. I'm on my Gmail. I think I just asked my Google address for permission. I don't think I'll play the video.
You just pull it up on YouTube.
I could. Let me see if there's a. I'm not quite sure what the video is called. Google company. Let's see if I can find it. Usually we'll have. It's a good video. I don't think I see it on here. Maybe I'm not Googling right. They're Sundar. I'll have to, maybe, I'll look for it in a little bit while you guys are. This is what it started with. So this is a picture of the garage, Larry and Sergey. This is part of the culture today, is that we are always asking big questions. That's what I love about Google, is that if you have a question to solve, people love to talk to you about the question, and then they're like, well, go fix it, go solve that question. So it's a huge part of our culture, and we only see ourselves growing. So we know there's a lot of problems to solve in this world, and we see ourselves solving those problems, from getting everyone the internet to the self-driving cars that we're working on right now, to any other kind of issue that you can imagine and dream up. So, and we think a lot of times this has actually been something that's HR that I sort of struggle with, because when we're like, okay, let's make this improvement, everyone's thinking 10 times ahead. They're like, well, let's not just do this, let's not just have our directors build this capability. Let's build a whole program so we can have all of our directors go through and learn the skills that they need to. So they're always thinking 10x. And then this is Sundar, and I think that's what you had said about the scale of Google, is that we always are trying to do it for everybody in the world. So our mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible. And we want to make that universally accessible is a huge part of our mission. We're always consistently trying to think about people in every part of the world who may not currently have access to that information. And then we've got a lot of great products. So sometimes I see some of our products and I'm like, oh, I didn't know we did that. I had no clue that, we, like Google Photos even, I know it's an amazing product, and when you learn about it, it does some wonderful things. But From Search has borne all of this, and I think that's the innovation that a lot of people associate with Google, is that I think everybody's heard about these 20% or 20% time, that we get 20% of our time to work on whatever we're really passionate about. Most of these products you see behind me came out of that 20% time. So like Gmail was a 20% project. I think Photos actually was a 20% project. So if you think about what that may mean for culture, we really, people are allowed to work on what they want to work on. You know, like, you can't necessarily hold people too accountable to stringent work plans, because we see innovation coming out from passion pursuit. So, and our Googlers. So I think, you know, we're also, one of the things we're most known for are these optimistic and curious problem solvers. Most of the team I work with now are directors who've been there 10 plus years. So for Google, you know, it's a big deal at Google, like what employee numbers are you? I didn't think they'd talk about that, but they do. They're always like, our SVP, Ben Smith, he was employee number 17. They talk about that a lot. They're like, oh my God, Ben, he's employee 17. And all of our numbers are assigned, you know, my number is the employee number I am. So it's right there on like our team's page where everyone can look up. But we've maintained from the very beginning, they have maintained a high standard in hiring. Actually, only 0.68% of the people who apply to Google are hired at Google. And that has to do with, they maintain sort of the strict rigor of committee hiring. So no one gets through just because they know someone. You have to show the Googliness that they're looking for. And a lot of this times, like, we'll talk about Googliness in a little bit, but, and these are just examples of what people are working on. So, you know, I have one director, Jay Krim, he's building the back end of search. He has built the back end of search. So that means, like, what that means is he pulls all the data that's out there in the web and he categorizes it so search can then like pull from that. But he's also really into like gastronomical cooking, you know, like it's just like, so if you think of, and it's a passion of his. He's always like, Emily, I think I have been to his house for a barbecue and he like, you know, blow torches all these wonderful, amazing meals. But it's sort of that kind of thing where the Googliness and the people that they're always, it's not just at work that they're exploring, it's this curiosity that comes from a Googler. And we have perks. So are there perks that you guys have heard about at Google? I know some of you experienced the free food. Any other perks?
Sleep pods.
Sleep pods, we have the nap pods.
Conference bikes.
Conference what?
The conference bikes.
Oh, yeah, the G-bikes, the Google bikes. Yeah, we have bikes to get to the different meetings everywhere.
We had like really tasty soft serve ice cream.
Soft serve ice cream. Yeah. They call it the Google 20. I think people gain 20 pounds. That's it. Those are the people fresh out of college.
Don't you get a free YouTube account if you work at Google?
Like the Red? YouTube Red?
No, just like.
Everybody gets a free-
It's free to upload videos and stuff. It's
Yes,
not-
yeah, you can do that.
That's cool.
We dog food a lot of things as employees, so we test out things as employees. So all the new products we're putting out too, we usually get to dog food and test out and get on our phones for free or whatever we're doing. Yep. Yeah.
I think one of the like most unique benefits I've heard is that if you were to pass away, your spouse would still get like 50% of your annual salary for 10 years.
10 years.
10
10 years, and your children get $2,000 each a month until they turn 18.
It's incredible.
No, until they turn 24, because it's to bring them through college.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's incredible. Yeah.
That made me afraid to work at Google. This might have it out for me. I have to pay $2,500, not
And that was born out of like, you know, doing the right thing. There was a director who passed away from cancer, and his kids were left behind. And Larry and Sergey were like, we've got to take care of this family. And so they came up with this policy and made it applicable to all employees, which it really is incredible. And, they're 100% taking. That's after also the life insurance too. Yeah.
Is there a benefit you've ever heard of that Google does not have?
That's a good
Like,
question.
I think
Like
there's
other
a-
companies.
I'm trying to think of like what I needed that I thought. And if I need it, what I do is I suggest to Google and they make it happen too. So there's a form where there's guts tickets where you file it and like, I just really would like to get my nails done on campus, okay. That's, one of my favorites is every Google Versary you have, so I just got this yesterday, you get a free massage. I didn't use it, but you get a free massage. And then the massages are really, really discounted. I think the one that retains our employees, has the most significance in retaining our employees is we pay in the 90th percentile of every job on the market. So we decided we can hire people who can pass our interview test, that we will pay them generously. And every single employee at Google, every single full-time employee gets stock options. That's not the case at most other companies. Most other companies you have to reach a certain level, and then you will. But everyone from our data set, our data center, yeah.
Sorry, Emily, quick question. So I've heard that sometimes these perks are like amazing for the first 6 months, and then afterward it's kind of less important. From your experience, have you seen that, how much do these play a factor in retention, I guess is the question.
That's a great question, and one I've actually asked myself a lot. The people I work with have been there 10 years, right? So the massages and the free food's not keeping them there every day, although it's helping collaborate better. I do think compensation keeps people there. When I look at what they're getting compensated and when I talk to them about it, they're like, well, I'm not gonna, I'll have those retention conversations with them. And they're like, well, I'm not gonna go anywhere, Google pays me so well. So that's why I say, I think that's a huge part of it. But we all know as HR professionals, it's also the work that you're doing, and if you feel like you're contributing and energized by that work you're doing, I think that's the number one thing. And I think that's what retains our people the most, is that they feel like they're building something still that's significant, that they're excited about, and that they can grow. Yeah. So, yeah, and I'm sure as Google grows, they're gonna look at that. They're gonna look at, Ruth, I don't know if you've heard about our new CFO. It's a huge topic at Google right now, because she started about 2 years ago. And for the first time this year, I had to work with my directors because they couldn't just hire anyone they wanted to hire. Like, they couldn't expand their headcount. Ruth said, no, you have a concrete headcount, you have to stick to that, and you can't hire just whatever you want to hire on your team. So that was a huge sticking point for a lot of people, because they've never been held to financial sort of discipline before. Yeah, and they were like, whoa. So Ruth's come in from Wall Street, and she's like, no, we have to have a budget, and it's important. So I think in the future, and rumor this year is we've always had like a couple Christmases ago, 3 Christmases ago, for some tax purposes, they had extra money. And so they came with cash, with $3,000 in cash for every single employee in envelopes, and they handed that out for Christmas. And they were like, this is your bonus. We have, our tax attorneys are telling us like this is the best thing to do with it. So they handed it out, and that's been the precedent, And so we have every year we have a Christmas or a holiday present, and this year I think maybe the first year we don't get that. So they're looking at some of those things and saying, okay, what's really the benefit other than the showmanship of it?
Yeah.
Although I would argue if they gave me $3,000 in cash, my loyalty would, my heart would even open up more to that. I think that's happening. And then there are jobs we can't imagine yet. So as we think about like the people we hire, we're hiring some people who have PhDs in, you know, in machine learning or PhDs in anything like astronomy. Because we believe that, and it's not just PhDs, it's people who are thinking bigger and thinking about projects that may be in the future. And we want to be prepared from that standpoint for the talent, to have that talent. So I wanted to, Reed asked me to talk a little bit about Project Oxygen. Has anybody, what have you guys heard about Google's management philosophies? I know this is like an ambiguous question, or a broad question. Have you heard anything about Google and management? Yeah.
Here's well, talking about Project Oxygen, they surveyed, well, it says what were the skills that managers had to have, and then reinvented the training program based on what was actually what leaders at Google needed to have.
Yeah, so that's exactly what Project Oxygen was. So to give a little context, what happened is one day, Larry walked into the offices when they were fairly new, I think it was 2001. He hadn't talked to anybody, and he said, I'm sick of having managers. Don't need managers. And he fired all the managers right there in an all-hands meeting. So, and he told them at that meeting why he didn't think they were doing a good job. It was very embarrassing for them, and the company was, you know, everyone there, Stacy Sullivan, who's still there in HR, she, you know, I've heard her talk about it, she was like, you can't do that, you know, you need managers. He didn't care, he fired them all. He didn't think they were important. So he goes about his life, and what he's finding is everybody's coming to him. And his philosophy was, we need technical people. And that is part of Google culture today. They believe that, you know, engineers sort of rule. You need technical people, and technical people can solve the problems that we need to solve. And what happened with Larry is he fired all the managers, and then he had to approve his expense reports. And he had to have conversations with people about their careers when they weren't, you know, feeling like their projects were getting the attention or, you know, the speed that they needed to be. And he hated that. He was like, this is a horrible decision, even though everyone told him it would be. So eventually he started rehiring technical project managers, but they had to have a technical background. So they hired someone in to do it, and they tried to get everybody with MBAs from Harvard and Stanford and Wharton to come and do it, and Larry hated all of them. And he was like, no, they need to be engineers. So then they hired all these engineers with an interest in business to sort of be the managers at Google. So that's sort of the back, that gives you a feeling for how Google feels about management. People do not want to manage them. I have a case study for you guys that will go into that. And also, the implication for HR is you don't really need HR, right? You just need HR to do tactical stuff. And any of you who've been in the Valley, Silicon Valley, you probably know, like, Steve Jobs hated HR. He did not like HR. He actually, he refused to hire them, and then he only had them for legal purposes. So like Apple, you know, for a long time, no one liked HR. And that's been sort of been the tradition in the Valley. So then, and like Larry, so all these new founders didn't like it. So what did Google do? What did Google do to convince people that we needed management and you needed help developing leadership? They used data. And that's what Project Oxygen is. So they spent years looking at data. And they looked at all people, all answers in Google Geist, which is our annual survey. And they talked to managers, both high-performing and low-performing managers, and they pulled all this information. And they had the data that showed the 8 common behaviors that make a great manager and some of the pitfalls, and then how it pays off. So this is how they did this work. What makes a great manager? So you'll read these behind me and you'll be like, that's pretty intuitive. You know, that's I could tell you that a good manager needs to be a good communicator. But it was groundbreaking for Google because it had the data to back it up and improve it. So they, what this did, and this was using, is that it got our leadership on board to be managers. They're like, you know what, the data is now in front of me, and I know what I need to do and how I need to act, and you're giving me the programs. So then we built out some programs to help teach people these things, where they thought, okay, I can really be an effective manager. And this is all people analytics. So this was all HR that did this, that gathered the data, used the data, and then said, we're gonna build programs to teach you, and we're going to do that. And that was sort of a turning point at Google and in the Valley of HR as a contributor, rather than just keeping you legally compliant, is when this happened. Yes.
So I have a quick question. So I was wondering if this was numbered in order of importance.
Um,
And if so, I thought it was interesting technical skills is at the bottom, since that seems to be
Yeah.
very different from what Google thought initially.
Yes, exactly. It is ordered in
Okay.
importance. So yeah, it's ordered by what they saw as most important in the results.
So it must have been like change for Google.
Yes.
Going out, having technical
Yes.
skills to the very bottom then.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And daily, I have this conversation with people where they're like, I'll have the conversation where they say, we need to hire this person, he or she is a good manager because of, they're a great coach, they set clear expectations, and they'll say, well, but she's not quite as good technically, or he's not quite as good technically. Like, true, but we can teach some of the technical, it's a daily conversation, and you have great technical skills on your team, you need someone who brings some of these other skills. So it's still a daily conversation that I have, but yeah, they've got that there now. And then these are the pitfalls that they came up with as they talked to everybody. So you can see those up there. Again, not groundbreaking in terms of what the actual subject matter is, but to the Googlers and to our leadership and Larry and Sergey, because they had the data to back it up and prove it, they were able to really gain credibility. And this is what they've seen. So since implementing this, they've been able to look at turnover, job satisfaction, and productivity and say, here are our results. Here are the things that are happening because we have focused on management and good managers. And then this is a busy graph to show what it is, the specific areas in our Google Rise that make that difference. So, any questions on project management or project oxygen? It's a good history lesson. Yeah.
How long ago did that occur?
That was 2009. So, and that's actually when Google first started hiring HR business partners, like actually making them HR business partners.
And what is it, are you training your people to become managers, or is everyone sort of in a different function and you're kind of finding those who have those qualities already and bringing them up? How does that work?
Yeah, that's a good question. So at Procter & Gamble, the leadership path was marketing, right? Like in the sense that our president had always had a marketing background. At Google, it's engineering. But everybody's a man, P&G, we were developing leaders. So a lot of our P&G alums went on to be chief finance officers and chief HR officers at other companies. And Google is getting there. It's not quite there. But so our project managers and product managers and HR, finance, some of the corporate functions that support those groups. I don't know if that's answering your question, but it is mostly the engineers that we are training and developing to lead, it's all my engineers who lead their organizations of 200 to 500 people. Yeah.
So how does selection take place? Like when you look at people, I mean, for a lot of companies, especially like Google, I can see in the same board, he has he's great at what he does, so definitely a manager, he can manage everyone and teach them how to do it.
Yeah,
But then imagine that's not how it comes.
right.
So how do you select who do?
That's actually the case study I'm gonna give you guys today, because I don't think Google's quite figured out that issue. How it works now, I can tell you how it works now, is they have promotion committees, and the promotion committees look at the people and they say, this person is managing people and they're pretty good at it, so why don't they just manage people? And this person is very technical and they're not really managing a lot of people, we'll give them the technical side. So that's how it happens now, which is not, it's not very strategic in some ways. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just curious just how the respect towards management and managers in general has changed since this study. And how, overall just how their perception has hopefully improved overall.
It's definitely improved. It's definitely improved. Like, the other thing I was gonna tell you in the case study, up until last year, they paid individual contributors, technical people, more than managers. So they actually were paying people who didn't have to manage people more money, because they were like, oh, you are brilliant, you're building something. And finally, this year, we've been working on it over 4 years from a compensation perspective, we've got caught up, and actually we pay managers slightly more than individual contributors now. So it's still very much a part of the culture where people, if you think about who we're hiring, they want to sit in front of a computer and code all day long. And they're brilliant, and they could do that and build amazing things. So that's really, the pull that a lot of people have, and which is why it's something that people admire. But our managers have much more visibility than those people. They are rewarded in similar and significant ways. So we're still making progress with that, and I hope you guys can come with some ideas with the case study on how to continue to improve that. But, yeah.
Are there still new studies going on or new areas for Project Oxygen, or is that
Yes.
kind of a closed book and you're just carrying it forward?
No, that's actually a great question. We use Project Oxygen all the time. So we have a whole people analytics department, and they're constantly using the data from that. And they actually just had an article in the New York Times that came out probably 10 months ago. Anyways, there's a huge article about how Project Oxygen is evolving and how we continue to do research on it and continue to come up with the programs and the metrics. Like, for example, Google Geist, which closes today, which is our employee survey. The questions are different every year, and they're based almost entirely on people analytics. So they ask very specific questions, data-driven, on is your manager a good coach? Do they communicate? Have you had a career conversation? So it's definitely still utilized.
Yeah, I had a question. Do they still do, I can't remember if it was Google or another company that does a progression track for individual contributors that they feel like they're also moving up the company as well? Is that Google, or I can't remember if that was...
So we promote our individual contributors. So the highest distinction you can get at Google as an individual contributor is a principal engineer. There's only like 5 of them in the whole company, but they're like senior vice presidents. They get paid like senior vice presidents, and they're called principal engineers.
So they're not necessarily managing anyone, but they're managing the product or the process.
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, I was talking to one of my directors, and I was like, oh yeah, this guy, people write their promo packets, and I was like, oh, so Jeff is going to write this person's promo packet, and they think it's going to be fine for him. And he started crying. He thought he was dying. He thought it was so funny. He's like, you don't know who Jeff is? It's like, no, who's Jeff? He's like, he's a principal engineer. Like, he built, so he's like, everybody in the Valley knows Jeff. I was like, oh, these famous people in the Valley, I'll bow down to Jeff next time I see him. I was like, gotta know Jeff. So, but yeah, so they're definitely still respected, and they get promoted on that path. I wanted to talk a little bit about the people operations function, the POPs function. So this is sort of how we're organized from an HR perspective. So this is our HR function. Eileen is our new Chief HR Officer. So as you know, Laszlo, I think most people have heard of Laszlo. He was our Chief HR Officer before. And he is now just consulting with us, and Eileen has come in. She has a sales background. So she came in to sort of operationalize, that's my perspective, but she came in to operationalize HR. A lot of these people, so Stacy Sullivan was that HR, she's been there since the beginning. She was the HR person who told Larry he couldn't get rid of managers. Judy, Becky, so Stacy, Judy, and Becky have all been there for a really long time. And if you think about what that means, they have seen it grow. They're not as entrenched in deep HR practices. So Google's trying to find a balance with that, with who it hires too. So there's 2,800 people in POPs, in people operations at Google, and 1,700 of them are in recruiting. We have a ton of people doing recruiting. And that's Sunil. So Sunil does all the recruiting. He's got that many people under him. To give you an example of how fast Google is growing, I have been at Google, I've now been there a year, I've been there longer than 20% of the full-time employees. That's not contractors. So they are hiring at phenomenal rates, and they need a large recruiting team to do that. And then you see Prasad, he's the people analytics. And Frank Wagner does compensation. He doesn't have very many people under him. All of those people, I think, if you look at people analytics, Prasad basically has built people analytics, like with a couple of other people with other companies, he's built people analytics as a function in a lot of ways. He's a great resource. Frank Wagner has done a lot with compensation and effectively compensating their employees. So I personally think there's some of the leading experts in the fields that they're in as well. And I haven't talked to Eileen, but I'll dial up Frank with comp questions or Sunil or recruiting questions. So they're accessible as well. That's something that Google really values, is sort of our flat organization. And then Becky is my director. So she's over all of tech, and I see her all the time and talk to her. So, this goes through, so this is staffing and operations, again, like where most of our people are. This is our learning and development function. So I have a partner, and she's my learning and development partner. I have a couple HR partners. So I have a diversity partner, I have a learning and development partner, and it's great. Like, I just say what I need, and then she goes and builds a learning and development program for my people, and we partner together in that way. And then analytics, compensation, and benefits. So you can see some of our purposes there. I also have a communications partner that helps with a lot of different communications I have to do with everything. And these are the specialists. So culture, events, we have some great events at Google, operations and diversity. And then finally, the business partners. Oh, Google also takes every year, I think it's every other year, but Google started by taking the whole company on trips. So a couple of years ago, they shut down Disneyland and they took everybody to Disneyland for the day. That's the whole POPs, the people operations function. They went like right before I joined. They went like last year in August to Disneyland and also shut it down.
I was there when that happened.
You were?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you not get to go in, or did
No,
they?
we were there with I was there with my wife and kids, and the park closed early that day. And then then we were trying to leave, but there's like a ton of people coming in at the same time, and they all had like the Google badges and Google stuff. And what's going on? Google had the park. I think it started like 5.
Okay.
And they had the park from like 5 till midnight or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was
Apparently
insane.
it's
I just remember I was like, what is going on? It was like trying to get all the normal people out so that people could come in.
Yeah, normal people. Yeah, and Google's got these pictures. So we used to go up to Tahoe. So every year my product area, PA, goes up to Tahoe. And so it's just this tradition to take trips. Again, we'll see how long those can last as the company keeps growing, but they're great. They're a lot of fun now. And business partners. So our roles are true consultants to our the people that we support, our VPs that we support. And I think when I left Procter & Gamble, this was what I was most worried about, is sort of what a little bit of the theme has been, is would I be able to truly be a partner and not really tactical? And I found, I've been very pleased that almost immediately people trusted me, the leaders looked to me for help and guidance, and we're still able to partner today with everything they need. They need a lot. And this is what, sort of our clarion call to do as HR business partners, is that we hope our clients are saying about us. And you'll see there's data-driven, analytical, knows the business, which if you're working in the back end, it's taken me a long time to get to know this business. I'm still learning, but it definitely helps as I support. And I think that's always, the hard thing with HR is you always have to protect the company and individual employees, right? So you're always finding the balance. I had this recently, I had an employee who she decided it would be a good idea to pull all the negative diversity experiences and put them into a doc and share them with the company. So for example, like, woman is sitting in a meeting and says something, interesting, and then a man says something 5 minutes later, and everyone agrees that that's a good idea, and the woman is undermined. So she pulled like all these examples. That's a huge liability to the company if we're not doing anything about it, if we're not addressing those types of discrimination, if you will. So it's been this tension of like, well, this is Google, we can, we're open source, we can put out whatever we want, and this is what I want to do for my 20%, and it's getting a lot of traction, we need to have this conversation, versus like, yeah, but, the company is at risk if you are putting these things out and we have no way to address it. So as HR business partners, you're always finding that balance that employees don't necessarily love of protecting the company and protecting them. So, and this is the last, people always ask how Google, what they look for, and I've talked a little about this. So these are the 3 characteristics: how a person thinks, leadership skills, role-related knowledge, and Googliness. They test to see your cognitive abilities, and it's more like how you're thinking. So, it's the 10X. Are you challenging people? They love to challenge people. I sit in meetings, and if I'm not buttoned up with my data, it's not personal. Again, like, it's engineers, but they will drill you down, and they will say, like, they will get to the bottom of the analytical thinking. And so you have to always be really prepared. For example, we just finished comp planning, and there's a lot of data, there's a lot of numbers. And my VP, he has 1,600 people reporting to him. And I was really prepared, I got all the data, and he pulled up an L3, which is an entry-level person, which is 6 tiers below him, and he said, her bonus is wrong. He's like, why is her bonus wrong? And I had to, of all the 1,600 people, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know why her bonus is wrong, So you have to be really prepared, because they're detail-oriented, they're analytical thinkers, and then we'll get to that problem. Googliness, what does googliness mean?
Curious.
Curious. Yeah.
Contributor.
Huh?
One's big difference.
Yeah. Larry and Sergey came from Stanford. I actually have family, my brothers went to Stanford, so I always, and then I lived on the East Coast, right, with Harvard out there. I think the differences between that is sort of like actually how I've best been able to understand Googliness. Like, the Stanford students, you sit in their dorms and they've got nothing going on. They don't have deadlines, you would never know it. You know, they're just like, yeah, let's go play ping pong, let's have a ping pong tournament. You would never know there's like that internally. Their minds are racing, they're, you know, it's like a duck, like they say underwater. Their minds are racing, they're thinking about a lot of things. They're, you know, they're trying to hold it together. But like, it's like this curiosity and like this really inquisitiveness. Whereas like a lot, at least what I saw on the East Coast was like very buttoned up and like, you know, you're going to, they will be overt about some of the intellectual conversations. So that's actually the best how I've been able to interpret that. And then you've got those three areas that we've talked about. So engineering, GBOs, and general administrative. So with that, I wanted to give you guys a couple of minutes to do a case study, and I'm hoping you can work together in like groups of 5. I won't count off, like, but I wanted to give you this first case study, which we've already, I actually wrote, this comes from a memo that I'm circulating among our VPs right now. So I'm hoping you can help us come up with some solutions. So the manager ladder requires different skills than the IC ladder. That's the technical individual contributors. And the path is not clear. So what, sort of to your question, like, we're not really, we don't have a point where we identify people from the path, and we need a way to do that. And then these are some patterns and themes. I think I've talked about most of these. The second point, there's some visibility to managers and the work they do, but there's less visibility to this technical path. So people see the managers, they see what they're doing, they don't always see the technical people. So, and I can, if you need time to look at this later, but I'm hoping in your groups that you can help us solve how do we proactively identify managers and individual contributors outside of Project Oxygen research and equalizing pay scales. How do we incentivize high-performance employees to become managers? And then how do we communicate these changes? Again, the communication piece is really, it's a hot point because we need managers, and if you ask every single one of our managers if they wanted